pose the same thing. Blockhouses on the top of the wall, every half mile to a mile, air-conditioned, bulletproof, so they can see who's approaching the wall. That is a great approach to shutting down the border. It's not perfect, but it's what we have to do now and do it quickly. Third topic, unemployment. What's the latest unemployment numbers in the United States?
17%.
You're right, 17 to 18% if you include
The people who are no longer looking for work.
and the part-time people that want full-time. So that's the real number. Construction, 24.7 going to 25%. My friend Scott, I want to talk to you about Scott. Scott is an X-ray technician. My age, been doing it for about 20 years, really good at his job. Last year, lost his job when the hospital shut down. By the way, that's an indication there's a problem when hospitals start shutting down. He loses his job. Normally, Scott, with his experience, would have had 20 offers in a week. It took him 6 months and 200 resumes to find a job 100 miles away from his house. More realistic now, let's give you another example. Company in Metro Phoenix, actually in Scottsdale, called Microsemi, a boutique chip manufacturer. 300 white-collar jobs are going to Malaysia next April. I don't know about you guys, but I'm appalled at Washington that they've allowed our blue-collar job workforce to go overseas and no one cares. The white-collar workforce to go overseas and no one cares. And now we're losing jobs no one ever thought about. Some accounting, some legal work. And if you break your leg at 3 o'clock in the morning, Ken, where do you get your x-ray read at? Possibly India. The professional fees are going overseas. The concept of free trade, in my mind, is hurting us. We have to modernize that into a term that we are using called equal trade. We must set ourselves up to compete equally, or we are going to continue to lose our economic base, our workforce. Now, there's a lot of reasons this has happened. I just want to highlight two. So they're not all of them, but let me highlight 2 reasons. Number one, our corporate tax rate, our combined federal and state corporate tax rate. Anybody know what that number is? That's the federal, and add on the state. You're perfectly right. It's 39.3% when you add the average state. 39.3% is our combined federal tax rate, the second highest in the world. Second highest. The other reason I want to talk about is some of our regulations. My favorite example, the U.S. steel industry. There's about 26 regulatory bodies that have imposed more than 5,700 regulations on that industry alone. What was once the powerhouse in the world when my parents were growing up is now producing 30% less steel than Japan. Less than Japan. So what am I going to do about that? We are focusing on 2 core issues here, and we're going to have a paper come out in about 2 weeks on this topic. First, and most important, a significant reduction in the federal corporate tax rate. We're going to be estimating that we'd like to bring it down to 15 to 20% from 35%. If you bring it down to that level, you are going to be one of the lowest countries in the world with a federal corporate tax rate, not the highest. That will drive jobs back here and help us create new jobs, which is really what we need to do. I want the textile jobs back here. The second thing is those regulations. Too many, too stifling, they must be reduced. Fourth topic, and to me the most important, which is why I saved it for last. It may not be the most glitziest to some people, but it's the most important. The economy as a whole. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think Washington has completely lost their mind. I think they're insane. They're spending money that they don't have and borrowing from our children's future. It's been a little over 1 year since the $787 billion stimulus package, and congratulations, we got very few sustainable jobs, more than 9,000 pork barrel projects, and when you add in the interest, well over $1 trillion of debt we've just assigned to our children. What's the deficit today, approximately?
13.3 trillion.
And going up or down?
Every day.
It's going to hit 14 trillion before the year's out. If you divide that amongst taxpayers, it's roughly $125,000 to $130,000 per each of you. And I don't know about you guys, but I never signed on the dotted line for that. I'm sure you didn't either. Now, Obama's answer to that is what? And what is he going to do to look like he's fiscally responsible?
Freeze spending.
Kind of.
Freeze taxes.
But what's he set up? Anybody know? He set up a commission to look into this. Guess who's on his panel and commission? 6 Democrats, that sounds fair, 6 Republicans. Say, that's pretty good, right? 6 more people he appoints. And that commission is not going to appoint or bring back the results until after the November elections. So what am I going to do about that? What's my response to that? I've talked to more and more and more people over the last 6 months with this campaign, and I've become more and more convinced it is now time for something that people wouldn't have talked about 5 or 10 years ago with any kind of credibility, a balanced budget. Ideally through a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution. But we've got to get our house in order. We've got to get this spending under control. Now here's the issue between the Democrats and Republicans. And by the way, I'm speaking to a Kiwanis Club on Thursday, which is going to be mostly Democrats, which will be kind of fun. If we can have the Democrats and the Republicans in Washington focus on this topic, and if they could agree that our children's future is at stake, and if they could agree that the balanced budget is the primary goal, we have all won. Then we could spend all day long arguing about how much money for entitlements, Department of Education, Department of Defense. Then we've won. Those are my 4 topics. And I would like to then switch gears and just spend a minute or two talking about how I'm different from the other candidates. So if you talk to your friends or neighbors on the eastern part of the Metro Phoenix area. First off, there's 6 people running in CD5. I've met essentially all of them. They're all nice people. But right now, 2010 is a precious year, and that seat is very, very important. Here's the differences between myself and them. First, I'm the only physician running in CD5, Republican or Democrat. Well, why is that important? I just told you healthcare is a mess and is only going to get worse. In Washington right now, there are 0 doctors, none with an emergency background. And emergency rooms are one of the most important problems we have in the healthcare system. Second, military. In our race, Republican and Democrat, there's no one with a former military background, and I come from an operational fighter unit. We still have 2 wars, as you know, roughly 700 bases. The Middle East is a powder keg. Iran may have nuclear bombs, and we've got a southern border that's atrocious. Third, has been endorsements. We've gotten endorsements from a great number of citizens, including about 50 doctors, Tea Party leaders, a Democrat, a radio talk show host who's never given out an endorsement in his entire career, TV talk show host. But my favorite endorsement comes from someone who, her name is Lieutenant Colonel Winnie Paul, and she endorsed me when she was in Kandahar, Afghanistan, all the way across the world. Fourth thing has been papers. We're the only candidate in our race that's written position papers on healthcare and border security, and soon we're going to be releasing a position paper on jobs and the economy. That will round out our 4 topics. The next difference has been forums. Now, when I go to Washington, hopefully, or your CD3 candidate goes to Washington, you're going to want to hold your representatives' feet to the fire and make sure they represent you. Hopefully, I'm demonstrating that through forums. We started hosting forums soon after I got into the race in January. We've hosted 7 forums. They've been on border security and healthcare. The last one, when border security had 185 people there and 3 TV stations and 7 speakers. Our 8th forum is in your package. It's tomorrow night. This is kind of a commercial. It's on jobs and the economy with 5 panelists. It's at 6 o'clock down in Tempe. If you can't make it, Brandon in the back, who's doing video right now, will have this up on our website by next week. The last difference, I think, between myself and the other candidates has been momentum and energy of the campaign through the media. I've been on ABC TV. We've been on the Michael Crawford TV show on Sundays twice. We've got another episode coming up on July 27th on Canadian medicine and what it's going to be like to be in Canada. I've had 3.5 hours on the radio and 2 more radio shows to go. So we're achieving a fair amount of media press that a normal congressional candidate has not been given. And then let me just summarize with this. 2010 is going to probably be the most important election of our lifetime. It will define America's future. The bad news is we are on a pathway to socialism. There's a lot of bad people in Washington who do not have your best interest at heart. and we are one paycheck away from a disaster. Good news is the Tea Party movement didn't exist before. A lot of us in this room were never involved in politics before at any level, and I think it's time that America is waking up. So again, I want to thank you for your time. Please let your friends and neighbors know about the campaign. Again, our race is going to be really precious, especially CD3 and CD5.